Hello. I'm Adam Brown. Thank you very much to the organisers for inviting me to speak. And yeah, what a fascinating couple of days. Here we are at the peak of inflated expectations. And I'm about to take you down the trough of disillusionment. So hang on in there. This is the I Am Your Future, okay? This is part two of I guess what I've called a two-part paper. The first part was delivered in Cyprus, in Limassol last year, at Money Lab number 13, which is a fantastic event organised by Geert Lovink and the Institute Network Cultures, but also NEAM, which is a fantastic little, quite significant cultural centre exploring. Some of you may know this. You know, they're very active, very interesting bunch of people based in Limassol. Money Lab 13 might well be the last iteration of Money Lab, but it's an initiative which has been looking at the future of finance, financial systems, speculative finance for some years, really triggered by the advent of cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, etc., and the challenges that these innovations have, posed to conventional ways of thinking about money and economic exchange. So I presented this idea. My research is all about architectural visualizations and links between the speculative architectural image and the financial systems and the construction of reality. So I always start like this. So if you've seen me talk before, you can skip this next bit, you can fast forward. But these images, the architectural visualization exists ahead of the construction of reality. So my argument is that the more realistic these images are, the more likely they are to come into being, in which case we might talk about the trace in reverse, we might talk about reverse causality, and we might talk about concepts such as hyperstition, which is the concept developed by the CCRU, Nick Land, Sadie Plant, Mark Fisher, where effects in the reality is produced by speaking it into being in quite a performative way. For example, within financialized economics, you know, whatever you say has an effect on the market, so you can quite easily produce effects in the markets just by using speech act kind of theory in live contexts. So these kind of things are off-plan real estate developments which will come into being if they recruit allies. This thing about the trace in reverse, we talked a lot today about the trace, the photographic trace, and we keep coming back to Bazin, Barthes, and Sontag, and Peirce, and always we have to reiterate this statement, this founding statement, the photographic credo, that the image is traced or stenciled off the reel. And I want to put the reason this is part two is because here we are right now talking about the photographic. This credo is very similar to the credo of the blockchain. We have a technology which needs a textual or linguistic or a discursive explanation in order to ground a truth function. In order to understand the truth function of the photograph, you have to go through this process of reenacting in your head the process of light entering the lens and the image turning like milk and blah, blah, every single time you press the button. With every time you place a transaction on the blockchain, you have to imagine in your head the miners beavering away, trying to crack the code of the hash and, expending vast amounts of energy doing so. But, the event in the world, the construction of reality, depends on an assemblage of an image or a technology and a text. So photography and the blockchain are very similar in that regard. And my contestation would be that this duality between photography and its justifying credo is just one example of many of these technologies in the world. AI being a new iteration of here comes an innovative technology with a justifying process-based credo, which we have to learn even if we dimly understand it. In fact, I would argue that the dim understanding of the founding credo of AI is part of its contemporary fascination, of which more later. So here we have, back to this. Here we have an image which foretells the future. Here we have an image of a development which foretells the future of the future. This is Liberland, which is a micronation on the border of Serbia and Croatia, in a piece of terra nullius on the borders of the Danube, not far from Apatin, which is in Vojvodina. And it's been claimed by a Czech politician called Vic Jedlička since 2015 as an independent state founded on principles of libertarian government, low regulation, adopting the cryptocurrency as its national currency. This is actually a later rendering of Liberland. I'm going to take you through a quick, before I come back to Liberland, let's just go on a little tour of these kind of things. They're fascinating, actually. Liberland is one of these crypto libertarian micronations. This is Akon City in Senegal, which was founded by the R&B singer, Senegalese US R&B singer Akon. This is a visualization of a city founded on his own cryptocurrency, Acoin or Acoin. This is Bitcoin City in El Salvador, which in 2021, I think it was, became the first country to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. This is Innovation Park in Nevada. There are many of these things. I guess to produce this kind of typology of these utopian developments founded on speculative economics, had to isolate an awful lot of projects which were just simply utopian, city building projects, fantasies of billionaires, etc., etc. Performative finance, it's about binding time. It's about predicting the future. It's about political, ecological, legal, material modes of binding time. Photography is all about binding time. It's not about the past, it's about the future. And I've yet to read Duncan Waldrich's book, but I'm sort of going back to early days of photographic theory and the idea of the photograph being something that produces the real rather than records the real is absolutely central. But here we're starting to see the creep of these concepts into finance and economics. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on at the moment about performative finance, in which ideas of imagination, imaginative capture, are absolutely crucial. The internalization of desire, the affective dimension of money, generation of anxiety, the generation of desire. This is all very much part of what we're talking about here. And binding time is all about this grid. And we can place our various kind of artifacts, be they AI-generated images or Bitcoin cities, some are on this grid. And capital is generated by discontinuities between these different sectors of the grid. Somebody, as Adolf Loos might be saying, well, our neighbors might be living in the 18th century while we're living in the 20th. And then, you know, there's an economic function to that. And binding time is very, very important to everything we're talking about. Photography is a form of debt. But here we have a great summary of the contemporary crisis. There's an economic crisis. And a lot of the things that we're talking about in this very conference are about solutions to the problem of the fact there isn't insufficient economic growth for those who hold capital to be able to maintain the 3% growth necessary for that capital to sustain itself, and the kind of desperation of capital to keep growing, to keep maintaining that, to keep holding that. And this involves binding ourselves to everything that already exists in every innovation. We are binding ourselves very firmly to the existent, to keep that narrative, to sustain that narrative and keep it going. We've got 5 minutes left. Here's the typology. These are all different kinds of places. We have Liberland, which is a metaversal structure. This is designed by Patrick Schumacher, the libertarian architect, now head of Zaha Hadid Architects. It's virtually, it was designed as a marketplace initially, and then it has gone through various kind of forms, but grafted itself onto Wittlichke's Liberland project as a kind of manifestation of the co-location of the virtual and the physical worlds. Akon City, Peter Thiel's seasteading project, AI-land, or AI-land, I can't pronounce it, which is in the South Pacific. Fiji, Crypto Island, there's many of these things. This is Ecuador, this is Prospera in Honduras, and this is Praxis, which is currently trying to establish itself on the Mediterranean. Typologies of totalizing systems. I mean, you know, here we have a typology of different framings of the future of urban living, which exclude the possibility of other possibilities. That we're looking at speculation upon speculation, speculation upon what will be the basis on which future realities will be established, what will be the future background to the things which we would call our foreground. I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to go to bit more about Liberland. And I'll probably kind of focus on this a bit. This is Patrick Schumacher's Floating City. This is where it is. It's on a kind of tiny little patch of swampland between Serbia and Croatia. And I guess, we're talking about the state, we're talking about the establishment of a state. And here is Vit Jedlička in the House of Lords. And what he's doing here is attempting to recruit approval from the state for the establishment of his micronation. Why something which is a libertarian utopian project needs the approval of a post-imperial culture to establish itself is a really interesting question. And of course, but then I think it reveals much more about the UK being the access point to a network of offshore bank accounts and, ways of... It reveals far more about the UK than it does about Liberland. So these are some more images of Liberland. Now, because of time constraints, I'm going to go through to the deconstruction of Liberland, which of course, 2015, Croatia invades Liberland. We're constantly invading Liberland and knocking down the houses. And of course, what we see is, howls of dissent from the libertarian community around the world. And also we see black and white photography. So we move quite swiftly from this kind of thing, and then as soon as things go wrong, we know exactly where we are. We're back in Magnum land, really. Yeah, but my contestation is that this destruction is part of it. Here we are. I mean, this is what A land looks like, in dreams. And look at this lovely, tilt shift effect. Let's simulate a 5:4 camera. It's a floating city, luxury. It doesn't look like luxury. It looks like a kind of container park. But anyway, this is what it really looks like. Yeah. There's a lovely slide here. Accommodations are much better now. I mean, my God, what did it look like? Is this the future of urban living? But my contestation would be that this tension between this and the idealistic vision is part of the game. This is exactly what's going on. That the kind of, this is a Liberland in reality. Yeah. So here is the photograph of what we were seeing proposed by. It's easy to laugh about these things and go, oh, this is kind of comical how different the reality is from the dream of this metaversal state. I'd argue that's actually part of the function. It's not a bug. This is exactly what is intended. We're looking at the doctrine of terra nullius, for anyone here from Australia or aware with Australian indigenous noises. And the critique of that here is a return to that colonialism. We're looking at architecture which is designed to fail. We're looking at clickbait images now. These images are, this is Neom, of course, in the Saudi Arabian desert, which, Peter Cook, the architect who provided the initial utopian vision for this in his wild imaginings in the 60s and 70s, admitted it was a completely daft idea and it was never going to happen. In which case, why are they creating highly realistic photographic style images of things that they know are not going to happen and are never going to happen? Yeah? Even Peter Thiel, now with his Seasteading Institute, these things are not really feasible from an engineering perspective. They never were anyway. I never really believed in this thing. So why did these photographic images exist? Here are the crypto cities. Here are the realities. So there's a typology of the cities, and there's a typology of the various... this is actually Acon City. It's one building. $4 million recruited, gone up in smoke. They're absolutely fascinating. But this productive tension is, of course, the productive tension at the heart of capitalism. This is exactly how it works. You can cast your mind back to that grid. The future of the future is in one subsection. The present of the present is in the other. And between those two, capital is generated. People need to live into different temporal realities. And there we have what photography is moving into, the negotiation of temporalities. The negotiation of what time are you living in, what time is your neighbor living in, and how we can actually convince and recruit. This is one of my students' photographs, Murray Heather, round of applause. Wonderful photograph showing Paris. This is what a city looks like under conditions of neoliberal growth. It doesn't look like this. And am I done, or have I got time for one more minute? 2 more minutes. Okay, this is the kind of sad ending of my project. Okay, we're coming to the end of this now. I've been banging on about the rendering for 10 years, and now the rendering is dead. Nobody wants to know about the metaverse. It's all about AI, guys, is it not? Yeah, we don't want to hear about the metaverse and digitally photorealistic images. And also, Bitcoin is gone. Let's face it. You know, is it a busted flush? It's kind of finding usefulness. This debate is out. We were talking last night about this, me and Eileen, about whether Bitcoin has a future, or cryptocurrency in general. Praxis City is a new project, okay? Here we see a utopian dream recruiting a hell of a load of, many followers. This is really popular, okay, amongst the libertarian community. But of course, it's managing to do that, being actually quite out-fascist about it, let's face it. It's built on the philosophy of national accelerationism. I'll leave that hanging there. But also, look at the images that Praxis is using to ground its vision of a city on the Mediterranean. There's recycling images from the founding mythos of the European imperialist project, those images of the classical world. Doesn't it strike you as odd that this is a libertarian, decentralized project? But that's not what I'd expect to see. I'd expect to see much more something like a favela or a free-for-all, or like London, like the chaos of London, which was built with a deliberately laissez-faire planning policy in opposition to Paris, which the English looked at. They saw housemanization and said, we're going to I'll build our city on the basis of laissez-faire planning. So between Paris and London, there's an interesting debate going on. This is the reality of capitalism after the logic of the market has taken its course, and of course, everything has devolved into a monopoly. So what we have here is the image after the process of monopolization. So every individual in the room will look at this image and say, well, hey, I could actually build this city. I could be the emperor. I could be this wanderer in the fog, this Caspar David Friedrich character looking over the, the misty aerial perspective of my domain. But of course, that's not how it works. In order for capitalism to work, there must be winners, there must be losers. We position ourselves here, but in reality, we're way out of the picture. But the economic logic is staring you right in the face. We imagine ourselves to be the city builders, even as we give more and more money to the people who will actually win out in the end. We call it the will to power pipeline. And I think here we are losing it. We no longer need renderings. We don't need that photographic truth anymore. That's not what we need in order to convince. These images are to convince. The techno-textual assemblage, which is winning conviction nowadays, is the text-to-image generator, the generative image. Different kind of truth, different kind of level of conviction. So saying goodbye to the index and the trace as a tool of persuasion, we're looking at a different order of truth now, where these images persuade, because they're mechanical function, because of that mythology, that mythos, that proof of truthfulness, proof of a kind of absolute truth of the scientific technological system. And I'm going to leave it there.